We're going to take a closer look at Nvidia. The stock is sitting at $115.54 as I am recording. The stock is nearly up 6%, despite there being a few bearish sentiments about maybe some analysts being bearish and also some threat in the Chinese market, which we're going to cover in today's episode. So let's take a closer look.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for the subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so we can see Nvidia is doing pretty good for the day, but it's not just Nvidia, right? The overall tech market is up. We can see Microsoft, a big company here, up roughly 1.7%, and other semiconductor companies like AMD up roughly 2.6%. We also have ARM up nearly 6% on the day. Let's see what else we have. We have Broadcom, another big player in the AI space, up 4%. We have even those that are dealing within the semiconductor market like Supermicro, which deal with AI servers, up roughly 4.5%. Even your favorite semiconductor company, Intel's up 4%. So overall, we can see a nice bullish sentiment here for the semiconductor market, where I want to say just a few days ago, everybody was worried about the semiconductor market, about the AI space. And I think this is why I enjoy doing my videos, where I talk a lot about kind of both the bullish and bearish news. But at the end of the day, I am still very, very bullish on the semiconductor space. So like I mentioned in today's episode, there are two things that I want to cover. The first are just kind of some bearish points by an analyst. So today on Yahoo Finance, there was an analyst that mentions that we are in a bearish market here for Nvidia. He mentions that each low recently has been lower and each high has been lower. I think we're in a bear market in Nvidia, and I would not be a buyer. Instead, they rather own consumer disposables. I rather own REITs. I rather own dividend paying stocks. I'll avoid Nvidia. He notes that Nvidia peaked in the middle of July, and since then it has gone lower, which he reads as a bear market indicator. So I mean, obviously based on what he would rather buy, we can see we're in different kind of investment lifestyles. I would never bash on buying dividend plays, but that's just not my style. And while maybe Nvidia might have peaked in the short term of things, I believe in the long term of things, this AI market is very, very real. And I've talked about it. Anywhere below 115, I believe, was a nice dollar cost averaging for Nvidia, and we got that opportunity. And usually those opportunities are not times when it looks like an opportunity. There's so much fear. But when you understand the long-term thesis of the stock, then you definitely see it. So Nvidia, definitely one that I believe in the long term can benefit from a lot of AI plays, and we've heard from just some of the bullish sentiments. We've heard all large tech players increase their capex. We've heard that demand for all their AI chip solutions continue to grow, and we're seeing technology evolve on a daily basis, from things like generative AI, autonomous driving, robotics, the healthcare market, the scientific market, physics, simulation, gaming, and the list goes on and on. So obviously, really good news for Nvidia. Let me know, what are your thoughts? Do you believe Nvidia is in a bear market right now? Would you rather buy dividend paying stocks opposed to Nvidia? For me, you guys know I'm very, very bullish in Nvidia. And another company, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I think AMD at these levels, I'm not saying it's the next Nvidia, but AMD at these levels looks very attractive as well. Broadcom is another one that's looking attractive, one that I don't own in forms of shares, but definitely is very bullish due to the overall AI space. Marvell is another one that I believe, this one I do own in shares. Marvell is also doing pretty good for the day. And these are all stocks I've talked about in the past. So I hope, let me know if you guys made any purchases in the last week or so. Now, before I take a closer look at the other update, which has to deal with the Chinese space, I want to say thank you all for the support we're getting on the ebooks. I have 2 ebooks. The first is kind of like an encyclopedia of public semiconductor companies. The second is in kind of a handbook of the current earnings season that we're in right now. The great thing is, obviously, earnings are still happening, and as more earnings come out, I am updating the book. So if you do purchase the books, you get free update version every time I update them, almost on a weekly basis for this quarter earnings. So obviously, when Nvidia comes out, I will be releasing the earnings report there as well. And right now, if you buy both ebooks, you get them at $20 off automatically. So check out moresemiinvesting.com. So the second topic I want to talk about is there are reports that Nvidia faces a new threat from Huawei. So for those that are not familiar with Huawei, this is a Chinese company that develops processors and AI accelerators. They've recently kind of taken advantage of Nvidia's regulation and export restrictions to China and have quickly developed some form of AI chips. The current one that they have right now is the 910B, and there are reports that they're going to release the next generation, the 910C, later this year. Now, many are fearing that this is bad news for Nvidia because Huawei, and I'm pretty sure I'm butchering the name, believes that this chip that they are battling or releasing is going to be comparable to Nvidia's H100. So there's a few things to remember from this Chinese company. Remember, regulations are impacting Nvidia, but they also impact the Chinese manufacturing system. For example, you can't send equipment to build the best AI chips to China. So Huawei is getting its chips built in companies that don't have the most advanced chips and for the most advanced equipment, and for that reason yields tend to be very, very low compared to Nvidia's H20, which is made by TSMC. The other thing that we are hearing about is Nvidia's, they do have the H20, which originally was not expected to do too much in China, but there are reports that the H20 is actually doing really good. We've talked about this in July 5th, that the H20 is expected to sell at least $12 billion in China in 2024. This is a market that for Nvidia has been kind of non-existent the past few quarters, and if these numbers are real, that is very important, especially if the H20 is battling against this company's current generation, the 910B. Now, to kind of combat this new generation, the 910C, there are reports that Nvidia is building a Chinese regulated chip that's gonna pass the regulations of the B200, which is gonna be the B20. I believe very similar to the H20, the B20 is going to do very good in forms of demand from Chinese players, just because many of these Chinese companies, when they built their AI system prior to kind of any of these regulation battles, they were building them on an Nvidia system, and Nvidia has a whole ecosystem from networking, from software solution, from infrastructure, that is going to be very costly for them to build or switch out to another chip, and they'll rather stay with Nvidia, even if maybe the performance might be a little bit weaker due to kind of the restrictions that Nvidia has over there. But overall, things are looking pretty good for Nvidia, and I really wouldn't be too worried about these news. And remember, the Chinese market right now for Nvidia is almost non-existent, so any growth there would be very, very strong. I did make an X earlier today talking about this, and like I mentioned, a few things to remember when looking at these news is Nvidia is reportedly seeing strong demand for the H20. Nvidia is preparing a version of the new flagship for the Chinese market, the B20. Chinese chip makers have low yields on some of these advanced chips due to equipment regulations. Nvidia is more than just a chip solution, and regardless, it's important to remember that regardless or despite without the Chinese market at the moment, the company is still seeing a ridiculous amount of demand. So I don't consider this bearish news. I think right now Nvidia is kind of just seeing where the market goes. If the market's green, Nvidia is going to be really, really green, and we're just waiting for earnings later in August, which I'm going to cover. And if you haven't, make sure to hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button so you get notifications. And we're so close to hitting 48,000 subs before I close out the episode. If you haven't, let's try to hit that goal. Thank you so much for all the support.